Cold open question of the day, Wes Goldberg. So there's a report earlier this week about how if the Wolves sale had gone through, they had plans, the A-Rod Mark Lowry ownership group had plans to cut payroll, save some money, and get some money back via tax payments from other teams. So what did you make of the story when it came through the wire?
I immediately thought about Glenn Taylor, and I immediately thought about the Minnesota Timberwolves and the roster crunch and payroll crunch that they are facing. It's a very real thing with the contracts that they have, and the fact that if Glenn Taylor isn't getting this money from the A-Rod group here, did he just write himself a check that his bank can't cash? Because if you're blaming the new ownership for wanting to cut payroll and not wanting to sell to that ownership because you're worried about the team, then don't you as the owner who didn't sell to that ownership group have to pay this team? Like, you can't make these comments like on the record or off the record, however we want to view this, to Adrian Wojnarowski, and then also cut payroll. So if you're a Timberwolves fan, you might be happy. You're like, oh, cool, like we can keep the whole gang together. We got Anthony Edwards. We got Rudy Gobert. We're not going to trade Karl-Anthony Towns. But at the same time, can you really afford to keep this group together? And if you're Glenn Taylor, this looks good now. You look like the hero of Minnesota. But if you turn around and trade one of these guys in a salary dump, like 4 months from now you're going to look really foolish. So that's a tough place for Glenn Taylor to be right now.
I also just love, Wes, that we're in a world where we're getting more owner gossip. We're getting more owner shenanigans, just all the dirt and corporate intrigue being spilled out into the world, which is just very, very funny. I think, too, I agree. I think the biggest point here is just like this team is really good. It defeats the whole purpose to me of like owning a basketball team to just like cut salary and say we're going to take a step back to save some money because of X, Y, or Z, right? Like that is not the business that I feel like these teams should be in, that these owners should be in. If you're going to buy a team, spend the money, right? Like spend the money. And Glenn Taylor's not like Herb Simon, but it's funny because he's also not like the best owner of the last 30 years. He's not in that conversation for like a variety of reasons, including Tom Thibodeau, like hiring Tom Thibodeau to run the whole thing and hiring David Kahn. And like there's a bunch of other things you could look at. Didn't maximize Kevin Durant's career, right? Or Kevin Garnett's career, excuse me. He would have loved to have Kevin Durant. This is just like one of those organizations that's been in a weird spot in part because of ownership. And yet the owner that's trying to like sell the team is trying to get his money is also, I think, correct. And like what he's leveraging this play on is also just the correct sentiment, which I think that whole part of this is fascinating. Yeah. Whoever advised him on this is absolutely doing a great job.
Are they though? Because now unless he's honestly ready to pay the team, because all the things you just laid out, Chris, are absolutely true. Like it has not been a great tenure for Glenn Taylor as owner of the Minnesota Timberwolves, but he can make up for all of it if the Minnesota Timberwolves win in a very major and meaningful way, right? Like we've just been waiting on Anthony Edwards this entire time, right? The second coming of Michael Jordan and all these things, like a face of the franchise and the face of the NBA. Like all of it becomes worth it if you can maximize this window. And to maximize this window, you're going to have to spend. But it never sounded like Glenn Taylor wanted to spend. And it was in part why he was trying to sell part of this team and then a majority stake of this team. And then when it became evident that this new group couldn't afford to take on the Timberwolves and kind of, take the baton and run with it, then he now is like saying, well, I'm not going to let you guys ruin what we've built here. And I agree with all that sentiment. Like all that's awesome. It makes for a great story. It makes for a great press release. But you got to back it up, buddy. In like 4 or 5 months, when the check comes due, you got to back it up because you can't in 5 months then trade one of these guys and cut payroll. So he's kind of backed himself into a financial corner here, which, again, if you're a Timberwolves fan, great. Back yourself into that financial corner because it ain't my money. I don't care. I just want the gang to stay together here because we got some good things happening.
It's going to be very funny when this ends with like this is the dam that the Saudi Arabia like money just comes in and that's how the Wolves stay together, and it's like Minnesota Timberwolves with the Riyadh Riyadh season jersey patch. That's like, I feel like this is just like the escalation that we deserve, Wes, in 2024 going into 2025. It's just the Wolves just loaded with money to pay all the bills.
Maybe Brooks Koepka just buys the Timberwolves with his live money. Like, who knows?
John Rahm, owner of the he wins the Masters, and he's like, by the way, I've put in a bid to buy the Wolves.
I feel like this is a great time for me to announce I am now the owner of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Have you ever been to Minneapolis, John Rahm? No, I haven't.
Ricky Rubio told me it was awesome. Like, they said that people were really nice. Is the only intel I know. I've never been there. Have not played a tournament in that state, but Ricky Rubio said great things about
they're
it. So
big
here
fans
we go.
of Target, the superstore.
Just like loves that he can get the Rock Skin Carolina Target. Just like, man, what a bargain. It's great stuff. All right, coming up on today's show, Jrue Holiday got extended for a lot of money, but also tells us something about the Boston Celtics' own financial plans. And we're going to get into the danger zone for a bunch of teams heading into the playoffs, including the Bucks, the Cavs, and the Lakers. That's going up today on the Just Basketball Show. Welcome in to the Just Basketball Show. We work 3 times a week, thrice weekly. Look at all things hoops. I'm Chris Manning. That's Wes Goldberg. Brendan Clean is off today. You can find him on Locked On Suns if you really miss Brendan, though. You can check out our friends at Thrive Fantasy as well. Thrive Fantasy is a player prop DFS platform where you can pick more or less on your favorite players across multiple sports, including the NBA and the NFL. Sign up today with code JustBasketball, and Thrive will match your first deposit up to $250. Wes, Jrue Holiday, 5 years, $135 million. The notable part of this deal to me that I think it tells us the most about what is going on here, and we can get into, is this a good deal, is this a bad deal, all of that, is that Jrue is taking less money next year, I believe it's $30 million in that first year, to save some money for the Boston Celtics. They are going to reduce some of their luxury tax payroll as they have a bunch of other possible extensions coming, including Jason Tatum's, including Kristaps Porzingis. That's going to be a really expensive team for the future. This extension adds to the expense, but it also gives them at least another year to figure this out, is my big read on this.
They're willing to pay this team, right? I mean, somebody might have to be the odd man out at some point, but that's not their problem right now. They're going for it. They're going for the championship. This is maybe now, I don't know how long they'd be willing to foot this bill, but a 2-year window seems like at least the minimum. They're going for it. They have the best starting 5 in the NBA. They're trying to keep it together. So if you're a Celtics fan, it's sort of the opposite of what we were just talking about with the Timberwolves. They backed it up, right? They went and acquired all these guys. People had questions about whether or not they could pay all these guys. They gave Jaylen Brown the $60 million a year extension, made him the highest paid player in the NBA history. All these things. They did it. And then they said, yep, the team's really good. We're blowing through the Eastern Conference. We're dominating. These are all good things. We're just going to say, and by the way, by doing this contract extension with Jrue Holiday, it also saves them $35 million in luxury taxes next year because he is taking a little bit less for longer term. So they're kind of getting their cake and eating it too, but they're keeping it all together. Can we talk about Jrue Holiday for a second?
Please.
I love this note.
Is this? Are we going to have the same one? Because there's something that I learned from the ESPN write-up on this about a stat he's having this year that melted my brain, and I had to go look it up myself to make sure it was real.
Okay, give me the stat because I have something else.
62% on corner threes this year, which would be the best over a season for any NBA player with 50-plus attempts in a season over the last 25 years.
So you're
That's
telling me
obscene.
It's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable, but like he's also shooting really well, and it speaks, I think, Wes, to that his role. Like we always knew this with him in Milwaukee. He's not like he is kind of a danger offensive player, right? Like for as great as he's defensively, he's been one of my favorite players to watch over the last several years.
Yeah.
Offensively, he is risky. He can sometimes make some decisions and take some shots that are a little out there. I mean, his most famous NBA play, without a doubt, that will be his most famous NBA play the day he retires, is the lob to Giannis. That was an audacious lob. He could have played that much safer, and instead he went for it, and I love that about him. But I think in this Boston system, part of the reason like he's shooting that well and also shooting a career best from three is that it is so simple. His offensive role is simple. It's not that he doesn't have a lot to do at times, or that he might not have more to do when the playoff starts, but with the way they play with all the shooting, with all the other skilled guys they have, his role is simple, and I think it makes his life really easy to shoot like that.
He plays his role really well. He literally stars in his role, right? But this is a lot of money to give it to that guy who's that role, who is what? The Boston's 5th best player at this point, maybe, depending on how you think of Kristaps Porzingis. But he's probably their 5th most important player behind Tatum and Brown and Porzingis and Derek White. And you're giving him a lot of money here. But that's the point, overall that I'm trying to make about Boston. It's like they don't really care about the money. Look, it's the Boston Celtics, man. Like, this is not a Timberwolves situation. They're going to be able to print money, especially if this thing goes the way that they think, where they're going to be in the finals again, maybe winning championships. Like, once you get to that point, you just hit, like, the Warriors, Steph Curry, Lakers, LeBron James zone, where it's just like, all right, we're just going to come out with this new alternate jersey, and we're going to have this sponsorship here, and you just start printing money. And that's might be what is on the doorstep right now for the Boston Celtics. It would have been nice, I guess, if you were Boston, to wait for the playoffs, because I also think Jrue Holiday, for all the reasons you laid out, might be the guy that defenses, if they're going to hide somebody, and hide is a strong word here because there's no really hiding anybody against Boston. It's why they're so good with their 5-out offense and all these things. But if you were going to pick one player to hide your worst defender on, it would probably be Jrue Holiday, wouldn't it? And so we'll see how the playoffs come through. It wasn't a great, I know we talk about the Bucks and their failings last year in the first round, and most of it is on Giannis and the injury and all these things. But Jrue Holiday quietly had a really bad series against the Miami Heat. So let's see what this looks like in the playoffs for Jrue Holiday. That said, here's what stood out to me from the ESPN write-up. Holiday is going to become the 4th player to sign a guaranteed deal worth more than $100 million at 33 years old or older. That list also includes LeBron James, Steph Curry, and Boston Celtics legend Al Horford. Our humble Jrue Holiday cashing in. Good for him, man. At the end of the day, he didn't do it with star power. He didn't do it with a ton of all-star appearances. But this guy made some money throughout his career, and he's going to make more money. Good for him.
I mean, I think that also speaks to the opportunity for him, and the opportunity for the Celtics is to win a lot, and I think you just do this. Maybe we should have seen this coming when they made this trade. You don't just trade for Jrue Holiday and not pay him a year from now unless it just doesn't work. This has absolutely worked. He's fit great. I'm not saying there's not risk, but Wes, I think this is the kind of situation. This being this good, I think being this good opens up the door to you paying someone into their late 30s, right? You can absorb it. It's worth the risk, especially when Tatum's his age, Brown's his age. Maybe Brown's ultimately the guy that has to go, but just because he's going to also be making a gargantuan amount of money, and everyone here is going to be making a gargantuan amount of money. The other thing I would say, I guess in defense of this, not even defense, just in favor of it, I think we're just going to be in a world, Wes, where every NBA contract for players of a certain ilk feels really big. It's unavoidable at this point.
Yeah, because you got the media rights deal, and everybody keeps talking about what it might be. And, man, every day I wake up, and it's this new streaming service is involved in maybe getting in on the NBA and stuff. So, this deal, this media rights deal, might end up being bigger than we even anticipated here. And if that's true, then what's a $30 million contract now is how we're going to have to view what basically was a $20 million contract, right? And if that's the case, then Jrue Holiday is going to be really worth it. So I definitely think this is a bet on the Celtics' part in that the cap is going to go up. They're going to have more money to spend. The new TV rights deal is going to make everybody flush, and everybody's going to be super happy with it. I don't think anybody was surprised, to your point, Chris, that they were going to extend Jrue Holiday. Maybe a little bit sticker shock here based on the length of the deal and the terms of it. $30 million a year, essentially, for 4 more years. That is a little surprising, but it just feels like everybody that when you talk to them, they're like, hey, don't worry about this. There's going to be an adjustment period about how we view these NBA contracts once this new media rights deal kicks in. And if you're the Celtics, then you're getting in right before everything kind of explodes. And if that's the case, and if we're to believe what basically maybe everybody who's bullish on this new media rights deal is telling us, then all this stuff might end up looking like a bargain, right? Jaylen Brown is the highest paid player in the NBA right now. He's not gonna be next year. That's gonna change real quick. And yeah, Jrue Holiday, $30 million a year at 33 years old, seems like a lot. Maybe it doesn't seem like a lot when we start seeing some of these new numbers rolling in.
Also, who's going to want to be the team to be like, yeah, we're going to be the team not to pay our guy? The NBA, I felt this more over the last year, 2 years than I ever have in my time covering and thinking about the league. I think teams have gotten to a place where they really feel like they are in player management and like make player happiness as like an optics thing to keep guys happy. Not every team has to worry about this, right? The Lakers are the Lakers. The Heat. Oof. Tough. Tough. Miami doesn't have to worry about this, right? Like, right. A lot of teams don't. Not a lot. A handful of select really lucky teams do not. But I think a team like Boston that, look, certain guys don't want to go there. We know that. Smaller market teams, I think a lot of times they have, even if I don't even really believe that this is like even the wisest strategy, I do just think we're starting to see evidence that teams are just going to do things because it's a good, they think it's like an optics win for them to just do something and figure it out later because it tells you, hey, we care about our guys. We take care of our guys. Be it, if you're with us, you'll get paid. We'll take care of you if you live up to it and do what we need you to do.
It looks great now. The Celtics are winning a bunch of games. The rest of the regular season doesn't matter, but I'll tell you what, the postseason definitely matters, and they better win at a high level, right? Because if they don't, if they flame out in the Eastern Conference bracket or something like that, then all of a sudden the vibes are not what they are now, and maybe people start second-guessing this contract. But right now, hey, congrats to the Celtics. You got a great – congrats to Jrue Holiday. Congrats. Vibes are good for now. You got to back it up in the postseason, buddy. Like, we'll see what happens, though.
All right, a team that they are going to go up against in the East is the Milwaukee Bucks, and that's going to kick off our Danger Zone segment here. So what this is going to be is we have 6 teams, the Bucks, the Lakers, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Orlando Magic, the Phoenix Suns, and the Atlanta Hawks that we are going to look at as different Danger Zone teams. Let's start with the Bucks because Giannis Antetokounmpo, one of the best players alive. Hit me.
Pardon me if I'm wrong. Don't we have this as an either-or? Are they in the danger zone or not?
Yes, I guess I just... Yes, but I think the Bucks are firmly in the danger zone because Giannis has a hurt calf and he's not going to play the rest of the regular season. And are we sure this team is good?
Are we going with the other version, or did we scratch that?
No, let's go either. We can go either. Yeah,
all right, so
we have to.
So we've got these 6 teams, and we're going to label them Danger Zone or Kramer
Zone.
Zone.
Yes. Okay, yes. I forgot about the Kramer Zone. Apologies to our Lord and Savior.
How could you forget about the Kramer Zone? So,
look, Brendan hates Seinfeld, and that has just, I guess, seeped into my brain.
I joined the podcast, and I wish that was disclosed to me.
Brendan, we found out at the same time that Brendan doesn't like Seinfeld, so I mean, if we want to like oust him, I think it's in our rights.
Yeah, I think this is like a Shohei Ohtani and his handler type of situation.
What Seinfeld character is Brendan now? Who do we want to mark him as? Is he who's
wants to be on the show the least? I don't know.
I think is he the mayor's aide?
That could work. Yeah.
Who then like is selling computers with Frank later?
Right. Yep. Something like that. Somebody who is around
Larry David in a cape.
It could be like Larry David, the whale hunter or saver, not hunter, opposite of hunter. I don't know. All I know is that we need to have a conversation with Brendan. But let's talk about what the Kramer Zone is because people know what the danger zone is. The Kramer Zone is the opposite of the danger zone. The Kramer Zone is where it looks like you're in danger, but everything's probably just going to work out anyway, as it always does for Kramer. So these teams all certainly look in danger, but are they actually in the danger zone, or is this more of just sort of the C storyline, Kramer Zone, where it's just going to work out in the end?
Oh, you know who Brendan is? He's Jackie Childs.
Explain.
He's Kramer's lawyer. Okay. You know, even when things were God for Kramer, you know who gets screwed by Kramer?
That's true.
Jackie Childs. And we're getting screwed by Brendan. Like we're going to spill coffee on ourselves, and take the free coffee for life, and Brendan's going to be pissed because he didn't get paid. That's what's going to happen here.
Outrageous.
So the Giannis thing, he's out for the end of the regular season. Honestly, just very happy that it wasn't an Achilles based on how that looked. Very fearful. This team is just not particularly good. It's a non-contact injury. I don't know how we can predict what he's going to look like in a week when the playoffs start. It's not like there's like 3 weeks left. And they're going to probably end up with the 2 seed. That's where this feels like it's headed. Right now, they have a 76% chance of being the 2 seed. But what could be waiting for them? is either the Miami Heat or the Philadelphia 76ers. So it's not like they're facing a necessarily winnable series or a series that they should feel uber confident going into after Giannis misses time right before the playoffs start. To me, this team, especially because of their aspirations, Wes, are title or bust when you make the Dame trade, I think they're in the danger zone.
Yeah, if the danger zone had a logo, it would be the Milwaukee Bucks logo. This team is the definition of the danger zone right now. They've been in the danger zone ever since, you could argue, they fired Mike Budenholzer and put that kind of pressure on them. They made the Damian Lillard trade over the summer. It hasn't worked out. They fire Adrian Griffin. They hire Doc Rivers. Everything they've done has been under pressure. Everything they've done has been under a serious amount of pressure. And you look at what's going to happen probably in the Eastern Conference, and they are not going to live up to the expectations that a team that made the moves, you make those moves because you're all in to win a championship, and that's going to be a huge upset at this point if the Bucks win the championship. So they're in the danger zone in the near term and in the long term, right? You look at the Giannis injury. He's out for the rest of the regular season. Still no time frame on whether or not he's going to be back for the playoffs, right? And a series against Miami, a series against Philadelphia, without a healthy Giannis, without 100% Giannis, we just saw how this works. We saw this last year when Giannis wasn't right and how everything falls apart around him. Now, I know they won the other night with Damian Lillard. No Giannis, no Chris Middleton. Cool. Congrats. End of the regular season, last week of the regular season. The playoffs are a different breed. You're going to need Giannis at full strength. And if he's anything short of that, then you're looking at a first-round upset, which is how we ended up in this place in the first place. You got upset in the first round last year. You fired your coach. You made a roster-altering trade that puts you into now, next year, $4 million away from the second apron with just 10 players under contract. Now, there's ways, you Pat Connaughton trade here, whatever. You can create some space, but it's an expensive team, and it's a team that's not even close to being as good as the top team in the East, or, not even that. This team can literally lose in the first round again based on the competition in the Eastern Conference, that they are just not head over heels better than, which is what they were supposed to be. So this has been a disaster so far. They are firmly in the danger zone. Will I ever say that a healthy Giannis and a healthy Dame can't figure it out? No, of course not. They could definitely figure it out. But there's a lot of things to figure out right now.
It also just feels like they should have figured it out by now if they were going to figure it out.
Yep.
I don't know how you feel about this, Wes, but when I was doing this exercise and thinking about them and really one other team in particular here, well, really two other teams in particular here, I think if you haven't figured it out now, I don't trust anyone to figure it out in the playoffs. I don't believe teams can figure it out like that. Maybe the Heat can, but I think the reason we kind of ascribe to them saying they could is because the organization's really well run. The coaching was really good. They just also had an identity down underneath there, even if it wasn't fully revealed to us all the time. If you're the Bucks, this is the first year of this group. You change coaches midseason. I don't believe you can just find what actually works and is going to sustain you, particularly because Giannis is coming off of injury. Even if you're the 2 seed, and that's a great thing on paper, you're facing down possibly. You're hoping to God Indiana falls to 7, is what you're hoping for. You're the biggest Cavs fan in the world on Friday night in Cleveland, and hoping Indiana loses and Philly can get up to 6. And if you're Cleveland, or excuse me, if you're the Bucks, you're feeling weird going into the series. I can't imagine, maybe that locker room has some resiliency we don't know, and maybe that's there, and Giannis is Giannis. But on top of Chris Middleton having his workload continuously monitored, Dame being where he is and what he is, the team's record under Doc saying, I'm hoping, I don't know, I'm just hoping as far as Giannis' availability for the playoffs. Are we staring down just another first-round exit for them? That feels so on the table, which is wild to say considering they have one of the best 3 players alive. That's
and then what happens?
Insane.
Because we saw what happened the last time they were upset in the first round. They blew up everything. They fired their coach. They changed over the roster in a meaningful way, trading Jrue Holiday out, bringing Damian Lillard in, major changes. And I think if this happens again, then don't you have to go down that same path? Don't you have to fire Doc Rivers? Don't you have to make some wholesale roster changes on something because to your point, Chris, you fired Griffin and hired Rivers in part to try to figure it out, and Rivers hasn't done anything better. at this point, right? There was like a little window there where they were playing like the Charlotte Hornets 3 times in 2 weeks where the defense looked good. And then they played some real opponents and it doesn't look good. And everything kind of came back down to earth. So if I'm this team is very, very firmly in the danger zone. I don't really know what the out is. If you were to trade Damian Lillard now, then I don't know what you can get back in return for that guy. What are you going to trade for Chris Middleton? Like, what are you going to get for him? What are you going to get for Brook Lopez? Like, nothing that's going to vault you up to the point of the Boston Celtics. And now, I hate to even bring this up, but like, this is something that Bucks fans have to be at least cognizant of is, well, if all that stuff ain't happening, it's not helping us get to where we need to go, then at what point? I know Giannis just signed the extension, but who cares? Like, at what point does he start looking around and he's like, well, everything crumbled beneath me here. Everything that I had built is gone. Like, why do I got to be here? You know? And so I don't know. It's been an absolute disaster for Milwaukee. And I don't even feel like I'm being hyperbolic just for the sake of a podcast. Like, this is nothing short of a disaster for Milwaukee. They just got to hope that a deep playoff run kind of puts a Band-Aid over everything and that they can kind of build on something. But they shouldn't have any belief. I don't know why you would.
Even them just putting together like a long playoff run feels so improbable to me that it scares me a little bit. Wes, to move to the next team, the LA Lakers. I am perpetually rooting for them just to like be normal because I want to see LeBron, right? Like selfishly, like I want to see LeBron one more big run, one more big push. Losing, they to some degree just like might be in the Kramer zone because even though they've lost 2 straight, even though they are in a situation where like it's possible they getting Denver in round 1, like they're what the top of the West ultimately shakes out as, and I'm gonna look at the breakdowns here as far as that goes. They could get us. There could be a world where it's just like I can't pick them in any series, like I just can't, but. If they could somehow get up to like 7 and get the Wolves, I'm not saying I'd pick them, but I'd feel better about it, like about their chances in that series, just because it's the Wolves and not the Nuggets. I just kind of expect things to just, even if this year ultimately like doesn't get LeBron another title or a deep playoff run, I just kind of think things will work out for them because it's the Lakers and because it's LeBron and because I feel like there is something here to be built off of. Like the identity is not super fun to watch all the time. I think some of the talent really hasn't worked. They don't have like the shooting I think they really need for a LeBron AD duo, which is like just a glaring weakness on this roster. But I think they're more in the Kramer zone to me because I trust I trust the city and the brand and LeBron. Especially if he leverages like one more big extension out of them to say we're gonna go get more guys to help and push for one more run with you and AD here.
Yeah, the Lakers aren't winning the championship this year, so it's like whatever that means. If that's a danger zone in the near term, like fine, whatever. The Lakers are the Kramer of the NBA, right? Like they fell ass backwards into LeBron James and a championship in 2020. Everything tends to work out for this team, no matter how many things that they do wrong, and no matter how often it seems like they're going to be in trouble. No matter what the Lakers do, things work out for the Los Angeles Lakers. They are Kramer. They're living off of found money, right? They just have the apartment in New York City, and you're not really sure why. And
they have no idea what the rent for their luxury condo overlooking Central Park in Midtown costs. They're just like, what?
Who knows how they pay for this? All right, it's a family-owned business that's getting COVID kickbacks here, but
shout out PPP loans, baby.
Yep. So the Lakers are the Kramer. Everything's going to be fine. You're absolutely right. They're not going to win the championship this year. That's fine. You got to feel good about the way LeBron played this year. You got to feel amazing about the way Anthony Davis looked this year. And if you can get a couple more years like that out of Anthony Davis and LeBron, and they're going to have another first-round pick that they're going to be able to trade this summer, everybody expects them to chase like somebody like Trae Young. If they're thinking at that level, and if they're able to get a guy, Trae Young or something of that caliber of an acquisition here, then they're right back in the mix of things next year, right? Like that's a team. If you put one more star on this team like that, the Lakers can win the championship next year. Why not? So all of a sudden, all these things start working out, just like it always works out for Kramer. So they are firmly in the Kramer zone. I have no doubt about that. Can I ask you about a team, by the way, while we're here?
Well, can I ask one last Lakers thing, and then we'll move on? LeBron and AD, are they both on your All-NBA team?
Yes.
So that they're going to be. I could see that happening next year. They could both make All NBA next year, and with roster tweaks, they're a title contender.
Yep. No question. You got those two guys. When you have those two guys, and they know how to play with each other, unlike Giannis and Dame, then you have that foundation that you need. And it does feel like they've figured things out the way that this regular season has ended for them. I do want to ask you about your team. While we're talking about danger zones, it's been a little rough for your hometown Cleveland Cavaliers.
Do you have a bomb siren that we can put on? Like, do you on your soundboard?
Let me see.
Do we have like a do you have the do you have like something that sounds like the Oppenheimer like score, just like a hum? Yeah, that feels right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Twilight Zone stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Stumbling does not seem like strong enough of a word to describe the end of the Cleveland Cavaliers season going into the playoffs, even if they do end up with a top 4 seed in the East. Are they in the danger zone, Chris?
Yeah, they're the danger. They like you said the Bucks are the face of the danger zone. I think the Cavs almost might be more so because they're not even like they don't even have like a top 3 guy who like has signed like whether like he might want out in the future or not. The Giannis thing like probably isn't happening this summer. You would think the NBA is unpredictable. We don't know, but like you would think you have time with Giannis because he's been patient. You won a title already. We're like at the Cavs thing where like Donovan Mitchell could be gone in like 2 months. Mm-hmm. Mark Stein's like saying that in his Substack, like the expectation, the chatter's growing louder that he's gonna be gone and they have to sign him or else they have to trade him, which feels right to me. Darius Garland's had an absolutely year. Mm-hmm. A lot of these guys in the roster just like aren't that good at making actual money. Like Karis LeVert, like not sure what we're doing here at his salary. Niang has had like some moments, but I don't know if he's like a just under sub mid level guy. Evan Mobley has shown you some stuff, I think, in flashes, but it hasn't been consistent. And his lunch is kind of getting eaten by a bunch of other young unicorns in the league. I don't think JB Bickerstaff's done a particularly good job with this team over the last month. I think with just the way they play and not like leaning into some things that really worked when you were down guys and kind of eschewing that identity. And they've been horrendous since the All-Star break. The defense has been bad the last 2 weeks in particular. I don't know how you could pick them, even if they get Orlando, who with Franz Wagner's out or whatever. Wes, I don't know how you could like pick them to like win a playoff series or do anything serious, and then where are you going? Or like if you have to trade Donovan this summer and maybe not getting the full dollar back, where are you even going? What are you doing with what you have left?
Yeah, they're not winning a playoff series this year. I wouldn't pick them in any of these playoff series. I would pick Orlando over them. I would pick the Knicks over them. I would pick Indiana over them. I just the way that they've played, it feels like there's just games where it feels like they've never seen each other sometimes. And some of that's on JB Bickerstaff, and I know his future is in question. So if that's the danger zone right now, then they're in the danger zone. I actually put them in the Kramer zone long term, though. I
love this.
I understand where
I
you're
love the swerve.
From. Yeah, you might be a little too close to the situation, which I understand. But look, like your 4 stars are like legitimately good players. We're talking about Jarrett Allen, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland. It doesn't work with those 4. We know that. But you could trade any 1, 2, 3 of those guys and get a significant return back. If you were to trade Donovan Mitchell, even with the extension kind of looming, like he's going to sign an extension somewhere, right? Like you're going to be able to get something. I don't know if it'll equal what you sent out for Donovan Mitchell, but you're going to be able to get quite a bit back for Donovan Mitchell. If you were to trade Darius Garland, you could get something meaningful back for Darius Garland. If you were to, they're not going to trade Evan Mobley, but if you wanted to, you can get a whole lot of stuff back for Evan Mobley. If you traded Jarrett Allen, you would get a lot for Jarrett Allen. So I just think that there's a really easy way to kind of do a corporate pivot. If you're the Cavs, you kind of understand the thing that you did the last 2 years hasn't worked, but you also have the resources to just redistribute to other places and be like, okay, what team do we want to be? Do we want to be a high pick and roll team of like Garland and Jarrett Allen or Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen? And we just try to retool around Donovan Mitchell this summer and see if that is something that convinces him to stay. What's the view? What's the team that you think that you could build that one day you can either contend or surpass the Boston Celtics in the future or whatever it is? Like, there's just a lot of ways to go if you're Cleveland, and that's why I kind of put them in the Kramer zone, because you don't really see a team that's going to maybe like blow it up or kind of make a drastic change with the resources that the Cavaliers have. Like, all these guys have value, and that's not even including guys like Max Strus or Niang or these other guys like who are going to have value if you want to, shop them for whatever kind of return that you're looking for, like LeVert, any of these guys. So I put them in the Kramer zone, but it also is going to require a very savvy front office with a very clear vision for what they do, because you really only have one shot at something like this, and they're going to have to nail it if and when they do it.
Where I have pause is I don't know if this, you mentioned like corporate pivot. That's a great way to put it. That's what they have to do. I think they have to make hard decisions if they're going to do this correctly is the thing.
Yep.
They have to just eat some mistakes, own up to some things, both like in terms of what they do and what they say. And I say this as like a guy who thinks JB Bickerstaff has like done a pretty decent job. I think there's a lot of credit for handling this team and helping them grow up post the John Beilein era. I don't know how you can look at the last month and think that reflects well on him as the guy running your team. And I think there's things they could be doing differently, whether it's scheme-wise, whether it's just like playing Sam Merrill, whether it's leaning into just trying to get more out of Garland at times where things haven't totally worked. I think there is a world where someone else gets more out of this team, or a different view on this roster and the way they like allocated some resources the last couple of years was like maybe a little more like future minded instead of like they've made, and there's little mistakes that add up over time too. Like I think trading for Karis LeVert to replace Ricky Rubio misunderstood what made Ricky Rubio a good fit with Darius Garland. I think it totally misunderstood what Rubio was good at that point in time. It was a defensive thing, not an offensive thing. You can't control the injuries. You just can't. Like that's going to happen. But I think if you're them and you're staring down this, I'm curious to see how bold they would go, because going really bold for them in the past has not worked. I think the Kobe Altman era has been much more pragmatic. But can you turn up the heat to be, aside from like Beilein, which I think was more Dan Gilbert, even if they sold it as a Kobe thing, like something even like Mike Budenholzer, I think would get like 10% more out of this team in a way that would make sense, right? Like a guy who, even if you kept Allen and Mobley because you feel like like you just want your two best assets, you have to trade Mitchell for stuff and whatever, and it's like a Garland, Mobley, Allen team with retooled role players around it. Like a Bud might get more out of this team just because what he does with scheme and his willingness to lean into some of the shooting stuff that could unlock some of this and make everything work more in a way JB just hasn't. Again, that's not totally fair to JB, and he's done a good job, and some of the roster stuff isn't his fault. But I do think like even just like or Jordy, could someone like Jordy Fernandez like revolutionize like how they play offense in terms of tempo and unlock something new? I think just a different voice might do this team some good, but it also might take some time. It might not be a next year thing. It might be 2 years from now this fully realizes itself.
Yeah, going back to the corporate pivot metaphor, if you're really going to just be the Uber of school supplies, then you better make sure you're the best at being the Uber for school supplies, right? Like if that's what we're going to be, then go get the people that know how to do it. And the one thing about Mike Budenholzer is you know exactly what a Mike Budenholzer team is, right? Like that team has an identity. That team does a specific thing, and it does that thing really well. That thing might have a ceiling here, but at least it gets you on the right path. At least it provides some sort of clarity and streamlines the organization, and you know what you're trying to be. So that's the biggest thing for this team over the summer is who do we want to be, what are we trying to accomplish, and what are the players that we need to do that. And whatever players don't fit into that, yeah, maybe it is some tough decisions. But whatever players don't fit into that, let's trade those players for players who do fit into that vision. I would imagine that Evan Mobley is going to be a part of that. And then whoever his co-pilot is that's going to be what it is. But it's tough. And by the way, like I think the other thing with Cleveland, they're in a weird spot where their two best players might be the players who have to go. I think Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen are their best players right now. The two players that they're sort of building around are Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. Can you take that step back to take that step forward and to actualize the player that they think Evan Mobley can be? Like those are the kinds of tough decisions that are in front of this team in the next few months, but and they got to nail it. So I think they're in the Kramer zone because I think they have the resources to nail it, but it doesn't mean that's not necessarily a prediction that they're going to nail it either.
Yeah, they have to prove themselves to think that they can nail a pivot like this and do some of this stuff right before we get the benefit of the doubt. Before we go to our next team, where are you at on Mobley?
I like him. I don't think he could be like the number one guy on a championship team, but I think he could basically be what Bam Adebayo seems to have peaked as, which is a really good number two. And as long as you have that number one scorer and a good roster around it, that team's going to have a chance. And so that's what I think of Evan Mobley. But it's interesting, right? Because you say, okay, well, can he really get to that level if he's playing next to another center like Jared Allen? The answer is probably no. But then as you see with some of those smaller centers across the league, eventually you have to have that bigger center as an option, especially in an NBA where these big centers are starting to dominate. Do you want to pay that other big center $20+ million a year? That's sort of the stopping point. Is you want to have that option on the roster. Jared Allen is maybe like the best version of that player, but you might be allocating too many of those resources in a new luxury tax world with a second cap apron and all that stuff. You might be allocating too many of those resources to that kind of player archetype. So the long and short of it is I think Evan Mobley could be very good, and I have not given up on him just because of this season.
Yeah, and look, the two things I would add to that, number one, I think no player in the league this year lost more development time due to injury than him. Mm-hmm. Like all the injuries, all the out of rhythm stuff, I think really cost him. He's had moments and starts and spurts where it's been awesome, and it has not sustained. I'm not gonna. There's a clip from a very national podcast that kind of flamed him this week that I don't fully agree with. I understand the sentiment. I'm not fully there with that. I'm more in lockstep with you. I think too. We're gonna learn. We have to learn something this summer with him. You would think because he's rookie extension eligible. Imagine he just gets like the mat. That's just kind of how this has worked. Jared Allen's also extension eligible. Is there a rush to do both of them? Is there? Yeah, like it's kind of like financial decision corner for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So interesting times. I don't necessarily. Kobe Altman's got a lot of work to do this summer, I think, to figure this out. I am also really curious to see how they answer some of these questions at the end of the year and what they say, because I think some honesty with your fan base would go a long way. I think that stuff oftentimes can at least show some understanding that the work's ahead. So I'm curious to see what they have to say about it. All right. I want to tell you about our friends at Homage. Homage is the ultra comfortable specialty apparel company. It uses vintage-inspired designs from licenses like the NBA and WNBA and WWE to make shirts and hoodies and everything that pay homage to the greatest stories, traditions, and figures across sports, music, and pop culture. Use our link below to make your purchase and support the Just Basketball Show. All right, Wes, the next team up is a team the Cavs could face in the playoffs. That's Orlando Magic. I think they're in the Kramer zone, ultimately. Long-term, two big things for them. Short-term, the Franz Wagner injury potentially hanging over what the season could be is an issue. Just we don't know how long exactly he's going to be out. He's missing a second straight game. And we don't know what he's going to look like on the playoff time. That's a bummer for a team that you would like to get some rhythm to. He's questionable for Friday against Philly in a game that will have some implications on the East playoff standing, so we'll see where that goes. And secondly, their guard situation long-term and their offensive evolution has to come at some point, and how they address that. And what I think they learned from this playoff run or whatever happens, if they play just the first round or can beat the Cavs, they get to round 2 or something, what they learn about their offense and what they decide to do with that information, I think will tell us a lot about where this team's going. But I just believe in Paolo. I believe in Franz. I'm a Jalen Suggs guy. He's in our stock portfolio for a reason, Wes. I think that they're in the Kramer zone pretty wholeheartedly. Full stop here.
Yeah, I know they lost a couple of games. You mentioned the Franz Wagner injury. It doesn't really look like this team is a real threat in the playoffs. But were they supposed to be? This is the Orlando Magic we're talking about, So
them being they're the 4 seed. That's ahead of schedule. That's awesome. Right. Congratulations.
If they had actually been in the play-in tournament, we wouldn't even be talking about them as a team that's potentially in danger. It's just almost because they overachieved for so much of the season that now we kind of maybe have a different view of them. But let's just remember who this team is. They're playing with house money. They're super young. Are there roster questions? Yes. Is there a ton of time to figure it out? Also, yes. Am I going to keep asking myself questions and answering them? No, I won't. So this is just a team that's playing with house money, good vibes. This is just a happy to be here thing. The Orlando Magic just got here, right? This is first week of college as a freshman. You're just trying to figure out the campus. Where do you got to be at what time? You're trying to figure out how the meal plan works. That's all they're doing right now. So it's all good, and you got a ton of time to figure it out.
They don't have the longest runway in the league. I think I still feel like Oklahoma City might, just because of all the talent they have and kind of understanding that everything's already clicking into place. Orlando has one of the longest runs in the league. And
they're kind of baby Celtics in a way, too, where it's like they're built around two big wings with Paolo and Franz. You got a defensive-minded guard in Jalen Suggs, right, who's sort of like the heir apparent to whatever it is that Marcus Smart was. You've got a bunch of good young players. You got a good coach. Like, all this stuff, like, we know the model, right? You got versatile big men who could play alongside those wings and those guards. Like, they have a really good model in place. There are pieces that they're missing. There are pieces that they need. But to your point, Chris, the runway's very long. There's plenty of time to figure it out. Go get that playoff experience the way that Tatum and Brown did earlier in their careers. Go get that playoff experience, even if it's just for 4 games. It's experience that they did not otherwise have, and it's valuable because of it. So everything's fine with the Orlando Magic. Not worried about them.
Phoenix Suns? We got the Phoenix Suns. I think just they're the West Coast face of the danger zone. How could they not be? You know, like this team was all about the title this year. This team is all about it working. Talking to our guy Brendan Clean, I know they are often maddening to watch. I think maybe they have a run in them, but where they are seeding wise, where everything is just shaping up for them, likely could be 6, but that's going to require to finish out the strong of the regular season. Then you're in the play-in tournament, and then you're staring down like the wall. Like there is just no easy path for them, and obviously a very tough conference, all of that stuff. But I just think this team is in the danger zone because it's very possible, like all of the star power, all of the talent, all of the money spent, the lack of flexibility going forward, and you're getting a first-round playoff loss out of it. Like what's the point of it at that point?
Based on the expectations of this team after the Kevin Durant deal, obviously make the Beal deal in the summer, for them to be in the play-in tournament, this season is already a failure. Like, the only way that you can turn this season around for Phoenix is by winning the championship, right? Getting to the finals. And based on what we've seen from this team this year, it would just be blind belief in this team and in, like, the ceiling of Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and the hypothetical, it feels like, ceiling of Bradley Beal, which is like a ceiling from 3 or 4 years ago when he scored 30 points a game on a bad Wizards team. Like, that trio just has not worked. And the moves around the fringes have been kind of fun in like a bowl way, but not exactly in an impactful way, right? And so this team, I agree with you, is in the thick of the danger zone. They are the West Coast danger zone avatar. And I'm even like as down as I am in the short term in terms of this playoff run, I'm even lower on them in the long term. I think it's cool that Matt Ishbia came in and started spending all this money and just said, the hell with your second tax apron, I don't care about it. I'm going to go spend this money because I hate Dan Gilbert or whatever the reason was. But, like, his tax bill is almost $70 million plus what he's already paying for this thing, right? Like, it's cool. Like, it's cool to say, like, I'm good paying that now. But how much longer are you going to be cool paying for that if this team is a fringe playoff team in the Western Conference? Like, Ishbia, for all the bravado and all this stuff, he got here because he's a savvy businessman, right? Like, he ain't going to do that for 2-3 years. Like, there's just no way that an owner is going to foot that bill for a team that's barely in the playoffs and not competing. So how do you break it up then, right? That's the logical next question. Well, Bradley Beal's got that no-trade clause. That makes him really hard to deal. And I don't know how many teams are lining up to take on that salary. So if you're trying to trim one of the big salaries, then it's Kevin Durant or Devin Booker. Are you kidding me? Like, you can't trade one of those guys because then you're really over. Then you might as well just trade everybody if you trade one of those guys and just start over completely. So I don't really see the way out of this if you're Phoenix other than Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal somehow figuring it out. Like, maybe they go to a camp this summer and just run the 3-man weave over and over until they figure out some sort of chemistry. I don't know what they have to do, but those 3 need to basically take this team and take it to the next level because what we've seen from them so far this year is just not – that ain't it, man. That's not the team that's winning a championship anytime soon.
No, they don't have it in the way I think you would need them to be a title contending team, and that's unfortunate. The money they spent, I'm a Durant guy, I'm a Booker guy, but it just has not clicked in a real way. All right, Wes, last team, the Atlanta Hawks.
Okay, danger zone.
Yeah, I could have talked myself into the Kramer zone in this way. If you had told me that the end of the year comes, and you're healthy enough to end the year, you get in, maybe you like pulling upset in the play-in, you never know what could happen, and you just end the year with some good vibes. Everyone's healthy. Great. Now you are Jalen Johnson's hurt, Onyeka Okongwu's hurt. You're not going to have them. Two of your best 4 or 5 guys. Trae Young's going to come back, we think. Like, there's this issue of just, okay, you don't even have Trae Young back with everyone that is back for you. Like, what are we doing here? Where's this going? Oh, excuse me, they lost in Trae Young's return. I apologize. They lost to the Hornets. Okay? You lost to the Charlotte Hornets. Wes, your favorite team, the Charlotte Hornets, but that's neither here or there. I don't know where this team is going. Like, if you compare them to, like, a Cleveland, Cleveland at least has, like, Garland and Mobley to say, like, we can pivot and, like, take our step back. What is the pivot for Atlanta? Like, I really like Jalen Johnson. I really like Okongwu. Like, what is a Trae Young with the Spurs getting? What is the pivot? What is that doing for Quinn Snyder? Like, I don't really understand what this team is going to. And like the more and more buzz we're hearing, Mark Stein had this in his newsletter. They will likely trade one of them this summer. Like, there's something coming here, but what is that? What does that look like? I don't know, and that there's not really like a obvious clarity to me here with this organization.
Yeah, this season's over for all intents and purposes for the Atlanta Hawks. They might not even make the playoffs because they have to get out. They have to win 2 games in the play-in tournament to get into the playoffs. So the season's been a failure, and that's already done. But in terms of this summer, they are sort of the opposite of the Cavs, where they don't really have the resources to make holistic changes that can make the team better. Like, okay, you're going to break up Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. We all agree that needs to happen, that partnership does not work, that they are not materially better when they're both on the court versus when it's just one of them on the court. All right, but let's explore what that means. All right, you trade Trae Young for picks or whatever you get for Trae Young. Now you're building around DeJounte Murray and Jalen Johnson and Okongwu. Like, that's cool, but, like, what is that team? That feels like another play-in team, doesn't it? Okay, maybe you don't do that. You keep Trae Young. Then you trade, because I think there's the argument to keeping Trae Young and trading DeJounte Murray is, we kind of know what DeJounte Murray is. Trae Young at least has the ceiling of being a top 10 player in the NBA, and there's not a lot of guys who could have that ceiling. Like, what he is a special offensive player, and if he can just sort of dial in the things that he needs to dial in, like, that guy can lead a top 5 offense in the NBA and be the face of your team and really be something that you could build a winning organization on top of. But that's been a heavy bet so far. So if you decide to just kind of keep going all in on Trae Young and that doesn't happen and you just trade DeJounte Murray, what are you really getting for DeJounte Murray? So now you're just, okay, now we're sort of back to square one where we're just hoping Trae Young becomes this guy at some point. We're cycling through 3, maybe 4 different coaches this time next year. We got Trae Young, Jalen Johnson again. Then what? Right? Like, it just feels like no matter which move they do, if it's trade Trae Young or trade DeJounte Murray, the Hawks are at a point where then they have to ask, all right, then what? And that's a hard place to be in. That's what we call mediocre, which is what they've been this entire time. So I don't really know what it is that they can do outside of just tearing it all down. And I just don't know that they have the appetite for that. And I wouldn't blame them for not having the appetite for that because they do have good players on this roster. But it just feels like no matter what, like if it's door A, door B, or door C, it all leads to the play-in tournament again.
A trade to me would be like the real just like full reset button. No matter what happens with DeJounte, like DeJounte can then just do what he's been doing with Trae's out, which is take every shot possible. It feels like,
yeah,
and you can just like
at the 9th seed again.
I mean, they feel very Bullsy, regardless of like where this ends up. They feel just sort of like the Bulls with like a bigger name star player.
Yep, pretty much.
No one wants to be the Bulls.
It like the Luka Doncic trade. I know Hawks fans hate rehashing it, but it was such a disaster. Like I still think like on paper it made sense. If you think that you can turn the Luka pick into multiple picks, the other part of that equation is you had to hit on all those picks, and you really only hit on one of them, and that was Trae Young. Like the DeAndre Hunter thing did not work. Like the other picks that they got from that Luka deal were busts. Like they didn't work, and now you're just sort of like pot committed to whatever this thing is, and it hasn't worked. So I don't know. I think the only other version of this is keep Trae Young, trade all this other stuff, and try to get some sort of co-star who is a better fit for Trae Young, who can help carry things, who can help kind of create a higher floor for this team defensively. That's the only way I see out of it. But now we're just talking about going even more all in on this thing, and if that if that doesn't work, and that's probably still not getting you to the level of like the Boston Celtics, right? Or who basically own the Eastern Conference right now. Like everything that every team in the East does for the next couple of years has to be viewed through the lens of, does this help us compete with the Boston Celtics? And I don't really know what move on the table is there for the Atlanta Hawks that gets them competitive with the Boston Celtics.
Let me ask you this: big picture East. If one of these other teams that isn't the Bucks, that isn't the Knicks, I think we could see the Knicks just going all in and like it making sense. And Philly obviously is kind of in their own category as well. So who of like Cleveland, Orlando, Indiana, and Atlanta, like those four, could talk themselves into just being all in and it working out for them at this point? If you look at the Heat being the Heat, and they might go on at some point as well, or their version of that. Philly is obviously very primed to do something like that. The Knicks are the Knicks, the Bucks are the Bucks. Among those other kind of four teams that are in that top 10 right now, who could be most justified this summer in going all in and trying to at least force themselves into the Kramer zone?
Give me those four teams again. It was Cleveland, Indiana, Orlando.
Cleveland, Orlando, Indiana, and the Hawks.
I'm going to go with the Pacers because they have the transformational guy. They've got Tyrese Halliburton. They've got a great co-star with Pascal Siakam. There's stuff there. You got a good coach in Rick Carlisle who's been there and done that. I would probably say the Pacers at this point because at least I know they have the guy, right? And you could sort of build around that. And they play a brand of basketball where they don't necessarily have to match Boston. They could just outrun Boston. Like they could be sort of transformational in their own right if all of these things that they need to hit, right? If Halliburton takes that next leap, if Pascal Siakam and him form this chemistry, if they can kind of find all the pieces that click into place, they could just almost redefine the Eastern Conference and how basketball is played in that conference because they might just be the team that teams have to catch up with. So that's obviously a hugely optimistic view of what the Pacers can do, but that's sort of the vision, right? If you're in the Pacers front office, that's sort of the mission statement. So I'll go with the Pacers for now.
Yeah,
What about you?
I would go Orlando. I just believe in the talent. I think a guard that like if they just got a their version of Mike Conley, I'd be like hell yeah. You know?
I love Orlando. Yeah, I think they're the next. I think they're right there. You got at the end of the day, you just need Paolo or Franz or both of them to take that next level leap, right? Because when it really comes down to it, like we could talk about all the role players and the fits and all that cute stuff.
Well, can I give you a name? Can I give you a name for them as a point guard? It's a big contract number, and I'm looking to see what you would do trade wise. What about Darius Garland for them?
I love it for them. I love that for them.
Okay.
I thought
I don't know what the
like,
deal
if you're
is.
Orlando, why didn't you do that at the deadline? Take a bunch of draft picks, throw them at the Cavs.
Yeah, the hard part is like the salary matching.
Yeah.
And it's like your best young guy in a trade is Anthony Black, really, because you're probably you're trying not to give up Franz, I would guess. Isaac's your big salary number, and it's like Jonathan Isaac in under 20 minutes. Like I kind of want that guy. Like I want to keep that guy around. You know, are you signing trading? Like the move would have been like what's he with Fultz? I guess Wendell Carter Jr.
Exactly.
You try to do something with like. Yeah, I'd be calling about Garland if I was them. I think that or like someone like that who's a little bit cheaper.
If the Orlando Magic this summer sign like a Jeff Green type to a 1-year, $18 million deal, you know what they're up to, right? Because they do kind of need that player at that salary cap slot, and they have a bunch of cap space to use. And the free agent class this year, as we know, is not great. And it's not like guys like Klay Thompson or Harden or Paul George are flocking to go play for the Orlando Magic. So what do? They do the next best thing. They just sign some player to some outrageous expiring salary so that they can attach a couple of those draft picks and maybe a young player and try to get that guy before the deadline.
Do we know where Tobias Harris is getting his fat contract then?
It's a great call. Yeah, it'll be something like that, just like a 1 year. Hey, buddy, you're probably not getting this salary anywhere else. We'll give it to you, guaranteed $22 million this year. Be happy with it. By February, it'll be half of what it was for another team to take on, and get to bunk buddy Anthony Black for a little while.
Yeah, just for no reason, we're putting your locker next to Anthony Black, and you guys need to you guys are being assigned as dinner partners on the road.
Get to know each other.
Yeah, just become friendly with each other. You might have to move in a couple months. All right, we're gonna end there.
Account.
Yeah, I know you guys we'll expense the Uber. You guys can Uber together if you're out in the city. Just get to know each other, chit chat. We got some icebreakers here for you if you'd like. Really prepped. Just take him under his wing. What do you mean? Because honestly, Wes, it's if you don't do that, it's got to be Isaac, and then it's Jet Howard and Anthony Black, and I guess you would trade Suggs for the right deal. Suggs should not be untouchable, but I would rather have traded Fultz.
Right. No,
or maybe they just re-signed Fultz at $23 million and say
that's not off the table. And look, there's enough young guys. They have enough picks. I don't know. They're not in the danger zone. They are firmly in the Kramer zone. The Orlando Magic are.
Yeah, great spot. All right, we're going to end there. This has been the Just Basketball Show for Friday, April 12th. We're a week away from NBA playoffs. We're right there with the WNBA draft next week. A whole bunch going on here. Coming on. Up next, too, we have Brendan Clean's interview with Stephanie White from ESPN, the head coach of the Connecticut Sun. She talks all things men's and women's hoops with Brendan here. So check out that up next in the Just Basketball Show, and we'll be back next week.